Welcome to this afternoon's presentation, F-1 Student Work Visa Strategies, What's Required for OPT, CPT, and STEM Extensions. My name is Mary Ann Thompson, the president and founder of GoinGlobal, and so honored and pleased to have you join us probably once again to hear yet more insights and current regulations from our presenters, Mark Rhodes and Crystal Malik, on this timely topic this afternoon. The presentation itself should last about 30 to 40 minutes. We'll have some opportunities for some live questions after that. And the big benefit, the cherry on the top, thanks to Mark and Crystal, is at the end of the presentation, you will be given their contact information, and they're available to provide you with complimentary consultation services regarding any additional questions you might have on this topic. You're looking now at the home page of what is the home page of thousands of pages of at-home and abroad resources from GoinGlobal. I want to spend a few minutes telling you about our market-leading resource, so you make sure that you take advantage of GoinGlobal as much as you will, hopefully, the information that Mark and Crystal will provide this afternoon. If you have not found where your access point is to GoinGlobal, I invite you to connect with your career center. Most of our 800 plus schools that use GoinGlobal embed the link to GoinGlobal within their career center. That being said, I want to make a special comment to say GoinGlobal's resources are just as, if not more applicable to any of you who may be interested or will pursue a study abroad opportunity, those involved with your international programs at your school, your college or university, or alumni services, even your library. GoinGlobal should be accessible to you both on and off campus. So if for any reason you don't have access to GoinGlobal off campus, connect with your career center. They in turn will be in touch with us, and that's something that we can fix, certainly. I do want to call out the resources that you'll find within GoinGlobal. Our career guides are designed and curated by subject matter experts in 120 locations. Our goal is to provide all the information and resources you will need to fast track your personal career exploration at home and abroad. I want to underscore that. With the name GoinGlobal, the presumption is we just have worldwide resources, when in fact we have city career guides, jobs and internships, H-1B information for dozens of cities throughout the United States. We have career guides, 16 million worldwide job and internship postings, a very detailed H-1B OPT channel with about 6 million H-1B visa application records, which very much will complement what Mark and Crystal will share with you today, and also an employer directory, 450,000 profiles of the largest employers throughout 196 countries. So it really doesn't come any more global than that. Please take advantage of our latest resource that we added this time last year called Culture Wizard. Very complimentary to the presentation today, but it is a group of cultural assessment and assimilation tools for 160 countries. Take advantage of the games, the quizzes, the culture guides for 160 countries. So we're all about empowering you to have greater success when you have that international integration, as I said, both at home and abroad. I do want to give a special shout out. We are partners of IIE, GoinGlobal is, the Institute for International Education. We have a number of your members joining us on this afternoon's call. A special welcome to you. I also want to mention, now that I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Crystal, Mark and Crystal will be joining us again to talk about permanent resident green cards in April 24th. You register for that just like you did for today's presentations from the GoinGlobal platform. With that, let me tell you a little bit more about Mark and Crystal. Mark Rhodes and Crystal Malik are well-known immigration attorneys with the Immigration Practice Group at the McCandlish Holton Law Firm. They work with companies and universities all over the United States, processing thousands of work visas and green card applications each year. Mark and Crystal frequently collaborate with college career services offices in your DSO, providing valuable information resources for both international students and career service professionals in regards to U.S. immigration procedure, which is changing constantly, and you'll hear more about that this afternoon. Mark appears regularly on the Best Lawyers in America list for immigration law, while Crystal has been recognized as a Best Lawyers in America, one to watch in the same field. I know you'll learn a lot this afternoon. Again, there have been some important changes to this topic in recent months. So with that, I'll turn it over to my friends, Mark and Crystal. And again, a special welcome to all of you who have joined us to hear more from our friends. Mark and Crystal, off to you.
All right, thanks very much. So as Mary Ann said, my name is Mark Rhodes, and this is Crystal Malik. We are both immigration attorneys, and that means what we do for a living is that we work with companies all over the United States, processing work visas and permanent resident green cards for international employees. We also do an awful lot of work with colleges and universities across the United States, working with career services offices and also working with international student and scholar offices addressing issues that relate to international students in the United States. And I can tell you that we're going to be going through a lot of information on CPT, curricular practical training, optional practical training, and the STEM extension of OPT. Probably more information that you're going to be able to absorb in the course of the next 30 minutes. So if you have questions at the end of this program and you walk out on a beautiful sunny day and you forget everything that you've heard, our contact information is up here on the screen. My contact information, phone and email, Crystal's contact information, and feel free to contact us, particularly if you are from a university international student office or a career services office. If you have questions about the immigration process for any of your international students, feel free to call us and send us an email. We don't charge for this. It's a great free service. So I commend our contact information to you. In addition to working with colleges and universities all over the country, we have partnered with GoinGlobal to present a series of webinars, including this one today. We've already given a couple on the process that international students will follow to stay and work in the United States after graduation. We have one coming up on permanent resident green cards, but the topic for today is very different. The topic for today is what are the work options available to international students while they're in their degree program? We're going to focus today on F-1 students. Now, there may be students at your university who are in visa categories other than F-1, but the focus of today is strictly F-1. So if you come across students in other visa categories, again, give us a call, send us an email. We're happy to answer your questions. So with regard to working in the United States during your degree program, the fundamental rule for F-1 students is that you're supposed to go to school. You're not supposed to work. The focus of what you're doing in the United States is supposed to be your studies. Now, what I'm going to be talking about here today and what Crystal's going to take over in just a second are the rules related to what happens when you're here in the US. So if you go home, say during the summer between your freshman and sophomore year, what you do in your home country has nothing to do with your F1 status. The rules that limit your ability to work only apply when you are in the United States. So what we're going to focus on is F1 students who want to work in the United States during your degree program. Other programs will talk about what happens after you graduate. This is pre-graduation. And if you are an F1 student, we have listed the options that are available to you to work in the United States during your degree program up here on the screen. And those options are extremely limited, unfortunately, because again, the rule is when you're an F1 student, you're supposed to study, you're not supposed to work. So the options for an F1 student to work in the United States include, number one, on-campus employment. You can work in a job on campus. You can work at the campus cafeteria. You can work at the campus bookstore. You can work as a research assistant in a laboratory. So you can work in many jobs that are on campus. Secondly, you can work off campus in very limited circumstances. The first circumstance that would allow you to work off campus is called curricular practical training, CPT. Crystal's going to go into some detail on curricular practical training, but essentially it is available to students who are in a degree program that has a work component that is part of that degree program. So many MBA programs have work components that require students to work off campus. If you're in a degree program like one of these MBA programs that requires off-campus work, you can take advantage of curricular practical training authorized by the university. You don't even have to apply to the Immigration Service. Other way to work off campus is called optional practical training. Every F1 student is eligible for up to 12 months of optional practical training, and we call it OPT. You can use that OPT during your degree program, or you can save it up and use that optional practical training after you graduate to work in the United States after graduation. Crystal's going to talk a little bit about the rules for pre-completion optional practical training, which is fairly rare, and the rules for post-completion optional practical training. So you have on-campus employment, you have CPT that allows off-campus employment, you have optional practical training that allows off-campus employment. Let me jump down to the designated international organizations. There are certain organizations that are permitted to hire F1 students to work. You can go to work for these international organizations like the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. There are others. If you have questions about those, I would encourage you to talk to your foreign student advisor at your university. The other way that students can work off campus is based on a severe economic hardship. That is, when you come to the United States in F1 status, you're supposed to have the financial resources to support yourself through the entirety of your degree program. Well, sometimes terrible things happen. Your country devolves into civil war, or your parents have a terrible accident, and you are facing severe economic hardship. If you are facing one of these circumstances, you can actually apply to the Immigration Service and get authorization to work in the United States, even though you are in F1 status. And Crystal, I think you said you had some issues related to other forms of hardship that are maybe available to students.
Yeah, so the economic hardship criteria, it can be personal or it could be national, right? If you have specifically your country has been become involved in a war, think Afghanistan, think Ukraine, think Haiti right now, where there's a big tragic thing that is happening in your country that is impacting everybody in that country pretty universally, then this is something where you wouldn't have to submit very much evidence to prove that you have an economic hardship, because it's a national, international known issue, right? You would still have to apply, you would still have to get this authorized through your DSO, and you'd still have to apply for a work card through U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. But it's a pretty easy thing to get because they know about this international issue, this issue that the whole country is having. It can also be personal, like Mark said, where your parent has a problem that causes them not to be able to work, or some kind of medical crisis, something happens personal to you that you'll be able to document, you can get it. There are also all sorts of other humanitarian programs that the U.S. government does. They're doing them currently, such as temporary protected status. This is a situation where you could possibly have both the economic hardship EAD, and you could also be eligible to actually transfer over to having dual statuses, where you could have temporary protected status and you could be in F-1 status at the same time. That right now, Ukraine has that, Syria has that, all sorts of countries are designated for temporary protected status. There's another thing for citizenships of Hong Kong, where it's deferred enforced departure, where you could get a work authorization card on that basis. So it's really important that if you have one of these economic hardships, that you also be exploring other options that might be open to you for independent work authorization that might be even longer, and might allow you to work maybe more hours. Those are the kinds of things that you would want to contact someone about those, so that you can investigate all of the options if you're having that type of an issue.
So again, and it's very important to understand that when I say that the options that are listed on the screen right now are the options for F-1 students, these are the only options. So if you are an F-1 student in the United States and you want to work here in the US, you can work on campus, that's fine. If you want to work off campus, the options that are available are either curricular practical training, you have to be in a degree program that has a work component that's part of the program. You can use optional practical training. You have to apply to the government to get a little work card called an employment authorization document, an EAD. You can work based on economic hardship if you qualify for economic hardship, or you can go to work for one of the designated international organizations. That's it. Those are the only options that are available. And because of that, I get many questions from students who say, well, why can't I volunteer? Can I go in because I want to beef up my resume? I want to do an unpaid internship off campus. Can't I volunteer to do that? And the answer is, that's the issue is whether you are providing a productive service. If you are providing a productive service, you are working, even if you're not getting paid to do that work. So in most circumstances, even if you want to volunteer to work off campus, you still need to use CPT or OPT or work based on economic hardship. So those are the options, and I'm going to turn it over to Crystal now, who's going to go into a little more detail with regard to each of these. Our goal is not to make you experts. We want to give you sort of an above the trees overview of how each of these options work. Crystal?
Our first focus is going to be on your curricular practical training. As Mark summarized, this is going to be where your program actually has a requirement for an internship or for some sort of project that requires work experience. You could think in this, as he said, business school. You could think technology-based jobs. You could think nursing students and teaching students who have to go and actually do practica or have to do patient care as part of their program. These are things that the school's already going to have set requirements for. They're going to have parts of the degree program that tell you ahead of time that they require this educational component that's going to require you to work. And they'll have specific paperwork requirements that they ask you to fulfill before you can do this curricular practical training experience. There will be departmental requirements, and there'll be requirements through your foreign student advisor. All of these program requirements are going to have to be approved by your designated school official in your international student office before you're allowed to start working. What's going to happen is that they're going to give you what all of those paperwork requirements are. It's going to be a lot of legwork. You're going to do that legwork, get all the sign-offs from your department and from your DSO. And your DSO is going to issue you a new I-20 that authorizes you to work for a specific employer for a specific period of time in a specific location. What you're going to be proving before you start this work is that this work is an integral part of your degree program. Your department and your degree program itself will probably already have a description within the degree program, within your curriculum, that explains why it's necessary. And they're going to kind of explain that to you, and you're going to have to be able to explain that in the future if it's ever questioned by any immigration official. But you're going to have this paperwork trail behind you. The university is going to designate all of the degree programs that are eligible for this. They're going to tell you exactly what type of positions it can be, and the I-20 will actually authorize you for this work. You're going to have to be enrolled for for one academic year. There are some programs that allow day one CPT available specifically for graduate degree programs. And every administration is a little bit different about these programs, these day one CPT programs, because the government entities, Immigration Service, sometimes feels that these are a little bit abused. So if you're going to a program that specifically has you day one CPT, and it doesn't seem like it's actually an integral part of the program, or if it's maybe a program at a university that's brand spanking new and that this is what they only specialize in, it's something you might want to have your antenna up about. You're going to want to make sure that this is a valid use of your CPT and that you're able to articulate why it's required for your degree program. You can be approved in these for either part-time, 20 hours or less, or full-time employment, and it can be paid or unpaid, noting that the information from Mark's first slide where he was talking about volunteer options, even if it's an unpaid option, even if it's an unpaid job, even if it's an unpaid experience, you're still having to have this authorized, because the work that you're doing is your training and it's productive work in almost every single scenario. Mark, did you have something you wanted to add there?
The audio is kind of going in and out, so I think some of what you just said at the end was lost. But the point about being able to use CPT in either a paid or an unpaid position, it's very important to understand that even if you're going to do an unpaid internship or a volunteer internship, you are always safer using curricular practical training if that is an option in your degree program. If it's not an option in your degree program, then we're going to talk about optional practical training as a mechanism to take advantage of that. If you decide not to use the optional practical training, then you're going to have to think long and hard about taking even a volunteer position. Pop to the next slide. All right, Crystal.
So the big deal here is that CPT is not going to be available to all students at all times. It's going to have to meet the very specific requirements on that last screen. So there are a lot of programs that aren't going to have a work component to them at all. They're not going to have any way for the university to approve you to work using curricular practical training, specifically because it's not integral to the program. It's not a requirement for the degree program. It just doesn't meet the government requirements. So CPT itself is only available while you are actually in the degree program, while you're actually completing your requirements, and very specific.
Once you graduate, no more CPT. I get that question frequently. Your curricular practical training ends at graduation.
And that's when we switch to our next set of slides here. Also, very important to understand that when you do optional practical training, you're eligible for 12 months of optional practical training after every degree level. If you use 12 months of curricular practical training while you're in your degree program, that's going to eliminate your opportunity for optional practical training. So it's really important to monitor very carefully the number of days that you are authorized and work for curricular practical training, because if you keep it below the 1 year mark, you'll still be eligible for optional practical training after graduation. You can go up to 360 days of CPT and still be eligible for another year of OPT. But if you hit that 365-day mark, your optional practical training is gone. And that's going to be a particularly bad loss if you're a STEM graduate. And we'll explain why in a little bit here. All right. So when you graduate, your next option for work authorization is your optional practical training. As I said a moment ago, when you graduated at a new degree level, a new higher degree level.
This slide is for pre-completion, which is rare. So pre-completion OPT. So if you don't have curricular practical training available to you, there is an option for you to work off campus using your OPT. Every F-1 student gets 12 months of optional practical training. You can use it during your degree program or save it for after you graduate. If you are desperate to work during your degree program and you don't have CPT, you may want to consider using pre-completion optional practical training. Take it away, Crystal.
And so the pre-completion optional practical training will day for day use up your post-completion optional practical training. So you have that full year of optional practical training. It can be pre-completion, it can be post-completion. But if you use it all in pre-completion, you're not going to have any more left for post-completion optional practical training.
So if you
When
have,
you do,
let's say you have an internship for the summer and you're going to work from June to August, 3 months. If you use optional practical training and you get the work card and you're able to work for those 3 months, you will lose that 3 months from your 12 total OPT eligibility. You'll only have 9 months remaining after you graduate. And for that reason, many international students don't want to use optional practical training during their program. You want to save it all until the end so you have that full 12 months of OPT after you graduate.
not to mention the transaction costs. So when you apply for optional practical training, you have to file an application with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. They charge several $100s to do that. They take a couple of months to process it. And if you're using pre-completion and post-completion, you're having to do that twice. That's why curricular practical training is pretty attractive, because if you can qualify for it, you're not having to file with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. You're only filing through your international student office, and you're not having to wait for that work authorization. You're just having to wait until you get the authorization from your international student office and your new I-20 form, which is that status document for F-1 students. If you're doing pre-completion and post-completion OPT, you have to get the authorization from your designated school official, your international student office. You have to pay for an employment authorization document application to be filed at the Immigration Service, and you have to wait for that to be filed and processed before you can start working. And then you're going to have to do that whole process again after you've graduated to get your post-completion optional practical training card. So if you're really desperate to work and you can't meet the curricular practical training or any of the other hardship requirements for work, this is an option. It's just not a particularly attractive option. It can be used once you have the employment authorization document to work in any position that uses your degree. It's related to your degree and will provide you training in your specialty. So you have to complete an academic year to be eligible. That's the same requirement for pre and post completion optional practical training.
Yeah, so the pre-completion OPT is really, I mean, that's a very sort of a rare option for most international students. But what is not rare is post-completion optional practical training, because for almost every F-1 student in the United States, using optional practical training after graduation is the best way to get your foot in the door with an employer. It allows 12 months of work authorization anywhere in the United States doing any job related to your degree. So, Crystal, take it away talking about the EAD.
So our post-completion optional practical training, this is, again, at every degree level, whether it's an associate's, it's a bachelor's, it's a master's, it's PhD, you're eligible for 12 months of optional practical training post-graduation. Again, like we said, for pre-completion OPT, you can use this for any job that's related to your degree. You have to apply through the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services for an employment authorization document, and your application has to meet all of the requirements that you see on your screen. So it has to be authorized by your international student office, your designated school official in CVIS. You have to have an I-20 issued that recommends that you be eligible for optional practical training. You can apply for your card up to 90 days before completion or up to 60 days after, but you also have to meet the requirement that your application be submitted within 30 days of the authorization on your I-20 by your designated student official, your designated school official. So all of these different requirements have to be met. It's gotten a lot easier recently because they now allow these to be filed online. And so you can make sure that everything is submitted on a specific day. We do recommend using their online system because you can really know that all of your application pieces are in. But what you really have to be careful of when you submit this is that you don't miss any of the requirements. So most universities, most colleges and universities have several sessions every year where your international student office goes through all of these requirements and tells you all of the services that they're going to provide to you to make sure that you are eligible and you will get approved for your optional practical training. It's really important to attend every single one of those that you can. If they bring somebody like us onto campus to talk to you about it as well, attend those. Attend all of the sessions that you can to know what your school's policies and procedures are on this, because you want to make sure that this is done right the first time. What happens is this goes to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and if you don't meet all of these requirements, they take anywhere from 90 to 120 days to process it. And by the time that they deny it, or by the time that they tell you you did something wrong, it's too late to refile it because you are outside of all of these required dates. So you need that application to be submitted right the first time. The majority of schools that we work with will actually check over these applications for you and make sure that they're complete and ready to go before you hit submit. And we really recommend taking advantage of that. The other thing that we saw a whole lot when they implemented online processing for these is people accidentally hitting submit before they got their new I-20 from the designated school official that authorized them to apply for this OPT. Do not do that. They cannot, by regulation, approve your case if the designated school official had not authorized you to apply before you hit submit on that application. When you do file these online, you get to pay online and you get to submit all of your evidence online. So it's really important to make sure that that I-20 with your authorization from your designated school official is on the application when you submit, that it's uploaded as part of your evidence. And that you make sure you do your payment, and that you make sure that it generates a receipt notice and a confirmation that you've submitted it within these timelines. It's a really great system when it works. And so as long as you have all of your confirmations that everything has been submitted, you're good to go. As long as you have that receipt notice and you can track that case and you make sure that it's all done within these requirements, you're going to be golden. All right. So when you do optional practical training at each degree level, you're eligible. Every graduate is eligible for 12 months. If you're a STEM major, if you are majoring in any of the science, technology, engineering, or math specialties, then you're going to be eligible for an extra 24 months of post-graduation work authorization. Now, with that original OPT, there's barely any requirements at all on your employer. They don't have to do anything but let you work just like they would anybody else. You'll show the employment authorization document and another ID. You'll fill out your I-9, and you're just going to go to work for your employer. When you go to the STEM OPT extension, there's a little bit more of a requirement. Your employer has to actually sign off on what's called a training plan. Now, they don't have to do very much for this, but they do have to be E-Verified employer, which is a voluntary program that the government has, and they have to be willing to sign off on the training plan and to make sure that you are receiving training and evaluation for the 2 years that you're working using STEM optional practical training. It's a really easy form to fill out. It's a 5-page form where you put your contact information, your own contact information, and your school contact information, and your major information on the cover sheet. And then you're actually allowed to fill out for your employer, do a draft for them, a description of what kind of a training program you're going to be getting, what your job description is, who's going to be evaluating you, and all of that. And they'll make any corrections as necessary before they sign off on it. They do have to provide an annual evaluation. You would actually write a self-evaluation, and they just sign off on it to say that it's accurate. So this is a very low amount of responsibility that they have, but it is a little bit, right? They have a little bit of skin in the game at this point because they do have to sign off, and they have a notification requirement where if you quit halfway through your program, they do have to notify your DSO. That's why all that contact information is on the cover sheet. So what happens is if you're a STEM major and you've figured out that you're eligible for this STEM extension, what you'll do is you will get the training plan filled out by your employer, assuming that they are E-Verified, and then you'll submit that training plan to your designated school official at your international student office, and they're going to evaluate that, make sure it's complete. As long as they accept it, as long as the job really is related to your STEM degree, they'll issue you another I-20 that authorizes you to apply for your STEM extension through the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So once you've gotten that, you'll go back online at that same MyUSCIS account, you'll file your application there. Again, this is another process where your DSO is going to have multiple sessions where they talk about it. They're going to have instructions online, and they're almost certainly going to be willing to review the application for you before you submit it. With this application, you have to apply before your optional practical training. That 1 year of OPT that you had, you have to apply before that expires. You can apply up to 6 months before it expires. And you can, with that, you'll get an additional 6 months of work authorization in case they don't process your STEM OPT extension before your OPT ends, right? So you'll have all of your year of OPT, and you'll have an additional extension of 6 months to work in case they don't manage to process your STEM OPT extension before your OPT expires. Now, the thing that's kind of time sensitive in these is that you do have a limit on the amount of unemployment that you're allowed to have when you're in optional practical training and STEM optional practical training. With OPT, it's a 90-day unemployment allowance. If you are a STEM eligible employee, then you can get up to 150 days of unemployment. But it's going to be super important to make sure that you are employed for the maximum number of days possible for this. You don't want to exceed that because it'll be considered a status violation. All right. All right, so.
Let's hit travel. I think you've done enough on the STEM part.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to take the travel or you want to take the travel?
I'll jump in on travel. This is a question that we get frequently, and that is particularly for post-completion OPT. And the issue is, okay, so I graduate, I apply, and I get my optional practical training work card. But you know, everybody in my hometown and my home country is so proud of me for my hard work at my university. They want to throw a parade in my honor. Can I travel back to my home country when I get my optional practical training work card? And the answer to that is any travel during the time period that you are using optional practical training, you're still F-1. So all the rules related to F-1 visas still apply to you. OPT is not a different status. OPT is a benefit of being an F-1 student. So when you travel outside the United States while you are using your optional practical training, you have to have all the things that you had when you travel anytime in F-1 status. And that is, you need to have the 4 things that are bullet pointed in red. You need an endorsed I-20 from your foreign student advisor. You need a valid F-1 visa in your passport if your visa has expired. You need to get a new visa when you are traveling in order to re-enter the United States. You need to bring your employment authorization document. And you need a letter from an employer confirming that when you return, you will be working in the United States. What the government does not want are a bunch of unemployed F-1 students with EADs but no jobs wandering around the United States. So if you travel, you should carry all 4 of these things when you return to the United States. Absence of any of these risks you not being allowed back in. We cannot assess the risk. It's going to depend on the immigration officer at the airport, who, by the way, hates you and hates his job and hates everything and would like to deny your reentry. If you have all of these things, then you maximize your chances of being readmitted to the United States without an issue. And with that, I think we can turn it over to Mary Ann for questions.
You've got me being a believer, Mark. I'm not going to go anywhere, and I don't even have all those limitations. Anyway, thank you, Mark and Crystal, again. Boy, so much to understand, so much to take away. You make it sound so simple, and yet it's not. But having your guidance and specifics, it sounds like if you adhere to the regulations, they're pretty straightforward, but there are no missing steps. A significant takeaway, Crystal, is your comment that everyone on this call, if this is a topic of personal interest to them, should attend all the presentations and opportunities on their campus where different experts or different departments within the school are giving presentations about this. This is my 6th presentation that I've listened to by Mark and Crystal. And before I founded GoinGlobal, I was an attorney. This is a lot to process and comprehend. I do not think you can listen to it too often. You will be able to take advantage of a recording of this webinar that'll be uploaded to GoinGlobal's platform. But with that, Crystal, I have we have an opportunity for a few questions, and I have one. If a student has used 10 months of their OPT after their bachelor's program, and they're now enrolled in a second bachelor's degree program, does it start all over again? Can they get a new or an additional 12 months of OPT because they're now in a second bachelor's program? Or do they just get the balance of the 2 months from their first bachelor's program that they didn't use with OPT?
And it's a new 12 months at each new degree level. So if, let's say that they did the first bachelor's degree and you said they used a couple of months, they used 9 months, 10 months of their OPT, that it's as if they used the full 12 months. That 12 months is gone. When they go to their second bachelor's program, they could possibly be eligible for curricular practical training if it's integral to their degree program and they meet the school's requirements, but they won't be eligible for another 12 months until they hit a new degree program. So if they went and did a master's degree program, they could be eligible for a new 12 months of optional practical training. PhD program, eligible for a new 12 months of optional practical training.
But it doesn't have to be a master's and a PhD. Just getting a second bachelor's degree has the same benefit.
No, you have to go to you get a new 12 months with each higher degree level. If you go to a parallel degree level, no additional OPT.
Or if you go below, we've had people who got a bachelor's and got a master's and then went back to an associate. They're not eligible for a new, for a lower degree level either, even if they never used that 12 months for the associates because they've used the 12 months for the bachelor's.
Right.
We've got a lot of questions on the screen here. Do we have any more that you had seen, Marianne?
No, let's spend about 10 minutes answering some questions, and then I'll have some closing comments, Crystal, and we'll close this out for the day.
Excellent. So the first question that we got, Mark, was part-time CPT. If you're doing under 20 hours a week, does that count against that 365-day allowance?
No, the rule with CPT is that if you use 12 months of full-time CPT, you lose your OPT. If you use any less, for example, you use 12 months of part-time CPT, well, that's not 12 months of full-time CPT. If you use 11 and a half months of full-time CPT, that's not 12 months. So you get to keep all of your OPT unless you use 12 months full-time CPT.
And the cutoff is that 20 hours. So if it's 20 hours or more, they consider that full-time. If it's under 20 hours, then you can count that as the part-time and it won't count against you.
Right.
This question comes up almost every single time. Can I say I don't need sponsorship if I only plan to work 3 years using my OPT? This is a question that's always asked, referring to the question on the application for employment from your employers. The issue here is that you don't really know what your plans are going to be after working for 3 years. And some employers do consider STEM OPT as a sponsorship because they have to fill out paperwork and they have to meet certain requirements. So if you were going to stay permanently, you would need sponsorship. So I would say that this is, while this person is specifically asking if they're only going to work that 3 years, do they have to answer yes? I think that you don't really know that at the beginning of an opportunity, and it could be seen as disingenuous, you know, if you say you're not going to need sponsorship when you actually would if you were going to stay. How do you feel about that one?
Well, I mean, as Crystal said, we get this question all the time because every employer has on their website, are you legally authorized to work for any employer? Well, if you have OPT, you are. But the follow-up question always is, will you now or in the future require employment visa sponsorship? You benefit nobody by playing games with that question. Employers want to know whether or not, if they keep you on and if you decide to stay, are they going to have to sponsor you? Some employers will not sponsor. They are going to put time and resources into training you. You're going to put time and resources into being at a company trying to develop a career and a future. If it gets to a point where you decide you want to stay and you've told the employer before that you won't need sponsorship and now you do, you're all going to have a problem. So my view is be upfront on that issue. There are thousands of employers in the United States who are willing to hire international students. Don't run around trying to chase down an employer that is skeptical of doing that when there are so many who don't have a problem with it. That's my view.
Next question is, are we able to engage in entrepreneurial activities during OPT?
Yes, you can actually open up your own company using optional practical training. The problem that you're going to have is at the end of your OPT, if you want to stay in the United States for a longer period of time, you're going to have to evaluate the longer term work visas that are going to be available to you. And those are going to be extremely limited. If you have particular questions about starting an entrepreneurial venture, some of it's going to depend on the country that you're from. Send us an email or give us a call, and I'm happy to answer that. It's more detail than we need to get into right now.
Okay. Someone asked specifically, what happens if a OPT student is laid off of work? And
yeah, well, you have 90 days of unemployment, and when you apply for your OPT, you don't need to have a job offer. So it could be that you apply for OPT, you make it available, let's say 30 days after graduation. Once that card becomes effective, that's when the 90-day clock starts ticking. That initial time period where you're waiting for the card, that doesn't count. Once the card is effective, then you have 90 days of unemployment. If you don't have a job offer yet, you better hurry up because that clock is ticking. Once you start working, the unemployment clock stops. If later you're laid off, it starts ticking again and it picks up from where it left off. So if you took 60 days to find a job, you have 30 days of unemployment time left. If you work for 9 months and then you're laid off, that clock starts ticking at 61 days and continues up to 90.
I have a question, Mark, and sorry to interrupt you, Crystal, but does the OPT, do they lose that part of the OPT calendar? Meaning, I started working at Amazon or Google, and I was, 4 months into it, and unemployment aside, I've chewed up 4 months of the 12 months that I get. Do I get any of that back? I mean, I've kind of invested my time in a company that through, no choice of mine, I no longer can contribute to or have an affiliation with. Do I only have part of those 12 months left, or does it start all over again if the employer lays me off?
Only the balance. Doesn't start all over again, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks. Crystal, another question from you. Wow. Okay, thank you, Crystal.
what happened?
No, you can go back to answering the question. I just wanted that. Okay. Mark was really focusing on the unemployment stuff, and I wondered how it affected the OPT calendar. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
So is it permissible to switch employers while using optional practical training, Crystal?
Yes, so you can definitely switch employers while you're on optional practical training. It'll go the exact same way as when you would switch employers, whether you were out of F-1 status or not. You find that new employer, you would show your documents showing that you have work authorization, and you would just switch over employers. If you're in your STEM OPT, it's a little bit more complicated because your new employer does have to fill out, or you and your new employer have to fill out a STEM OPT training plan and submit that to your DSO so that the new employment can be entered into your CVIS record. It's really important to note that the whole time that you're doing optional practical training and STEM OPT, that you're still in F-1 status and you're still going to be in contact with your DSO. You're still going to be contacting them every time that your job changes to make sure your CVIS record is up to date. And if you're in STEM OPT, you're going to be updating them with new training plans the whole time. If a STEM student uses up their 12 months of pre-completion OPT, how would they file for a STEM extension on OPT after graduation?
Can't do it. It is called the STEM extension of OPT. And if you have run out of your optional practical training, there's nothing to extend.
Yeah, and that's the timing problem, right? So if is a PhD higher than a master's? Yes, the PhD is the higher level. So if you get your master's and you do a STEM OPT, you could do it again at a PhD level. What happens? What is the risk if a student does accept an unpaid internship while they are a student not in CPT or OPT status?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the issue is that you would be not maintaining your status because students are only allowed to work with authorization. And if you don't have authorization, then it's called unauthorized employment and it would put you out of status. It's a really, really big deal because it would make you ineligible for a change of status. It would make you ineligible to continue attending school. If detected, you could actually be removed. So it's a really kind of high stakes game. And it's really important that you pay very close attention to these very, very small details because a small status violation could really mess up your entire education. The issue is that one of the ways that you fix it if you have this unauthorized employment is that you would actually have to leave the US and come back on a new visa. And it makes it a lot harder if you have an old status violation to get an F-1 visa. So just one mistake can really cause a cascade of problems. It's just better not to take that risk. So always, always, always get your work authorized through your international student office. Make sure that you have all the documentation in a row because this is a really high stakes game. All of your future statuses are based on whether or not you've maintained your status throughout.
Crystal, I have a question, and I'll let this be the last one before I do the closeout. It's kind of a two-part question. Does the government, with all the categories you and Mark have spoken about this afternoon, do these regulations or does the government make any differentiation between whether what the student experience, if it's a two-part question, is there a difference to the government if the opportunity is called employment or it's called an internship? That's my first question. And then the second question, does the government get caught up in whether it's paid or unpaid? Do they automatically assume that if it's not paid, it's not a volunteer, that it's volunteer? So does it matter if it's called employment or an internship? Does it matter if it's paid or unpaid?
No, what an employer calls the work opportunity is irrelevant. The issue is whether or not you're providing a productive service for that organization. So they can call it an internship, they can call it a practicum, they can call it experiential learning, they can call it anything they want. If you're providing a productive service, as far as the government's concerned, that is employment, and you need employment authorization, such as CPT or OPT, in order to take advantage of that opportunity. Same thing with regard to whether it's paid or unpaid. If an employer has you working, providing a productive service, the employer is supposed to pay you. Even if you volunteer not to be paid, that is still active employment, and you need employment authorization to do it.
Well, we could stay on the phone many more hours and still not get to all these questions. So on behalf of all the several hundred attendees who have joined us this afternoon, Going Global team, including our thanks once again to Mark and Crystal. Every time we listen to your insights, we all learn a little more. I do want to remind everyone to join Mark and Crystal again, same time in about a month, April 24th. I also want to encourage you to attend one of the multiple training sessions that Going Global offers. You register here on our platform, the same place you do for Mark and Crystal, so you can learn more about how the rest of the Going Global resources, in addition to the content provided by Mark and Crystal, can really benefit you, clarify, and fast-track your personal career exploration. Again, a special benefit offered to you by Mark and Crystal is your availability and invitation to connect with them with any questions you might have about this topic or relevant topics to the U.S. Visa Immigration Program. So on behalf of Going Global, on behalf of Mark, Crystal, and the entire McClandish Holton Law Firm, many thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hope you'll take the time and opportunity to join us on April 24th. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.